Welcome back to Cosmic Conversations. You are tapping in to the root of the symmetry. I am your boy, Tahuti Trismegistus, and today's Cosmic Conversations, we are talking about elements. Specifically, how do we use elements to create our life? Let's get into it. Dear Thoth. Also, call me Tahuti. Look, I get it. Thoth is more popular because it's the whitewash version. So, everything that's more popular in this society is because it's whitewashed, is because it was changed to fit a wider agenda. And that whitewashing agenda is always genocide. So, Thoth is a name that genocidal maniacs came to whitewash Tahuti. I'll use Thoth because when we're here in English, it's thought. Thoth, thought, taught. And then like to taught someone, and then it's like you hold something taut to be tight, and it's whatever. All that earth energy, logic energy, thought, Thoth. It's just the way that this English language, the colonizers have been using these signs and sigils to manipulate these parts of spirit, which is why I'm back doing my part of spirit. So, Tahuti. All right, I'll keep riding with Thoth just because relatability. I know people are lost. It doesn't help for me to just come up with my whole new words. The whole point of coming in here into the simulation and learning this language and developing these relationships and connections is so that I can properly communicate everything that I am at this point. Dear Thoth, I absolutely love the content you've been putting out for eons. Thank you. The way how you explain that Hermes is the air of your spirit, while Thoth is the earth of your spirit, got me thinking deeply about elements. So this person's talking about this quick questions video that I posted of how I talk about the connection between Hermes and Thoth. So here's my question. How can you tell which elements someone is predominantly in and which is your favorite? Bet. So this is all, personality stuff that they are now extrapolating. They got inspired from watching my video and seeing me talk about how Hermes, whatever, the Hermes, so many ways, Hermes is the air. That is how I resell, and my spirit is nothing. So when my spirit creates an imagination, your ideal version of yourself, that's basically like the closest thing to your higher self. And really, that's where you would have many higher selves, depending on how evolved you are as a spirit. You're not just going to have one higher idea of yourself. So the whole point of a higher self is that it's your dreams. And your body is your lower self. So you as a spirit are none of these things. But you have created a body so that you can specifically chase your dreams. So you created a lower version of yourself so that you can learn how to lift the weight of that very dense, low vibration body into your high vibrational spirit. And then that's just like the balance because you want them to meet. That's the point of fasting. So Thoth is the earth of how then my imagination stabilizes, my spirit stabilizes its imagination. So Hermes, being air, is how my spirit communicates its imagination. My higher self, the imagination being Iracel. And then the way that my spirit stabilizes its imagination is in the image of Tahuti, Thoth. So these two aspects of me, are like strong ass representations of me, and they're all being created from the higher self space of Iracel, which is the ultimate imaginative projection of my actually infinite spirit. So Chase is basically the name for the mind. Like that's the name that I would give my mind, or my Lucifer, as far as the way that I connect with my creations is Chase. Like I chi ace. And there's like many ways in there as far as chi ascending, or to actually chase your dreams because you can never actually attain something because there's nothing to attain. So you're just making stuff up and chasing it like a dog, and then that's how we're all relating. There's many ways that this stuff works. So when you're talking about the way that my spirit has consciously articulated itself with elements and has consciously created bodies and lived in certain energies to sort of make that an example and learn more about myself. I love being me. I'm naturally my creations. So this is the point of, if you as a spirit, if you truly love yourself, you're going to make bodies that you want to be lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. You're going to make ideas and things about yourself that you want to be lifetime after lifetime. You're not going to run away from yourself. There's no running away from yourself. That's where you get to the God mode of visiting different simulations using the same form. Because you love yourself so much, you're not running away into simulations trying to relate and shapeshift into the forms of the people there so that you can manipulate and colonize them. So let's talk about elements. How do you know what element someone is predominantly in? So elements, this is where the ego is light. The spirit is nothing. So light, the heavier it gets, that's the denser it gets. So the lightest light is something that you can't see. And then dense light is something that you can see. So elements are all light. When we talk about what elements are in general, we need to know that it's just how light moves. So when we can compare how light moves inside the different elements, then we can see which one of the numbers spirits correlate to the most as well, because each element correlates to a number. Okay. Spirit, fire, water, air, earth. These are our 5 elements of 5 cycle reality. So all 5 cycle realities are at the base. Spirit, nothingness, expressing an imagination. And that first imagination, that first desire to be something, reflects in on itself and becomes its own demon. And that's where it has to learn about itself, because anything that you want, anything that you desire, cannot exist without the opposite. So anything you want for yourself must be informed by what you don't want. So this is where fire and water are 2 opposite sides of the spirit. The fire is your imagination. The fire is your desire of what you want. Your water is how you feel about what you want. And we can feel anything about how we want. This is sort of where we can see how chaotic the spirit is. So water is all about reacting to fire. Fire is the first light, it dances, and then water is here reacting to that fire. What happens when you join the fire and water together? So if you have an imagination that you feel like connecting with an imagination outside of yourself, then you're going to get into air mode. And that's where you combine your water and your fire, and you create the first externalization of spirit. So this is why everything in the universe is air, because everything's connected by chi. Chi and air are the same thing in this case, because we need to breathe. Like chi and breathe is the same thing. If you're going to get into any chi practices, then you best believe you're going to be doing breath work constantly. That's why breathing is essential. If someone can convince you that not breathing is healthy for you, then they're really going to be able to trap you on some really messed up medical system that is only going to destroy your health. Because they were able to convince you that the air, the one thing that like you're connected to and actually gives you life and chi, is dangerous. And air is water. Because that's the point. Air is a combination of fire and water. So water carries fire. Like water is the vibration that carries the intention of that vibration. So you hear the vibration of my voice. This vibration is carrying the intention of why I'm speaking in the first place. Why am I using my voice to anchor my feelings into these words that I'm logically making up with the hopes that whoever is connected will be able to perceive and understand how I'm using these words? You know, because we can never assume that people understand us ever. Like you literally just can't. This is the point of communication and why communication is everything. And miscommunication is the downfall of everything. You know, because this is where we can see how elements work. So when you go from fire to water to air, that air, the particles from that air, everything that air is, right, it spreads out, it's all in the air. It settles down into dust, though. So that's where we can see the creation of earth. Air turns into earth based on how air came from water, because that water turned into steam based on how the fire that desired to create that water and connect in the first place combines its imagination into the connection. So this is why chi simultaneously connects all of us, yet we have all of our own different reservoirs and our totally unique ways of communicating with ourselves. So we all have our own unique chi. This is where when the particles in air settle down into dust and they turn into ground and everything, we finally have earth. So now you finally have something to stand on. NASA, white supremacist scientists, like to teach it as earth, water fell on earth. That's what I learned in science class, and like that's what I was forced to regurgitate to be considered smart enough to be a slave and get out of school. Was that water fell on earth, when literally that's like only lies. So they force you to regurgitate lies because, you know, again, slavery. This is like their form of mental warfare. Schools were created as a way to indoctrinate indigenous peoples into Christianity, like boarding schools specifically. So that's like the foundation of all of the American schooling systems, is to convert you into Christian ideology slash believing Luciferian Christian things. So we can see how science and Christianity are the same. Very hard, because they're two expressions of one brain. This brain wants to convince you that it's God and that you're not. So this brain, this white supremacist brain, is doing everything it can to create concepts to make you believe that you're not as powerful as it is. And it needs you to use your power to project into it that it's right. So it's doing its best to manipulate physical reality and like just constantly show up every day to spread genocide so that it can create this physical reality and just colonize the whole universe to ideally get people lost in light. So that's where like all these white supremacist spirits, if they can convince you that your spirit is light, then the moment that you make a body and physical reality, then they're able to just trap you there, basically. Because when you think that you are something, now you're limited and you're controlled by nothing and by entities who know that they're nothing. So it's important that you always know that you are a spirit using light to express yourself. And the way that your light moves is going to be which element you're most likely in. So when this person's asking about how can you tell which element someone is predominantly in, this is what they mean. So fire is 1, water is 2, air is 3, earth is 4, spirit naturally 0. So with spirit being 0, that's nothingness, that's space, that's basically doing nothing. That's someone who's spiritual. Like you can tell if someone prefers none of the elements and they would just rather be no element at all, then that's the spirit. Like that's someone who literally, you can talk to them and they just won't do anything. They're just like, and they're just silent. No reaction. The spirit gives no reaction because the spirit's not even there to give a reaction. The spirit like can't care. Like what's there to care about? Like the spirit has to actively feel like it's attached to something to start caring. This is what empathy is about. You can't relate with people that you don't attach to similar labels and experiences as them. So this is the point. Like, as spirits, we're infinitely unrelatable to each other. We're too unique. We're too individual. We need to create circumstances where we feel like we're the same so that we can project our uniqueness onto the other person and connect even more. This is just natural. This is how we create life. It's, so we don't feel alone, whatever. Just how we create life in general. This is how all of life is made. So if someone is in the spirit, they don't react. They don't move. They're not about that life. Now, let's say someone goes into projecting their imagination. This would be our Leos, our Capricorns, not Capricorns. This would be our Leos, our Sagittarius, and our Aries, the fire signs, if you're into Zodiac. Zodiac is going to slap here, by the way, because nothing is a coincidence. So this is why astrology is lit. If you have, astrological alignments and everything, because you probably do, you were born, you have them. But whatever they are physical earth manifestations of how your spirit decided to ground its personality. So your spirit is like, okay, like when I'm born in this world, this is the physical system and the cycles that basically I'll best be able to like learn about myself from. And if you're not able to fully learn about yourself from those cycles based on actually communicating about them and interacting with them, then yeah, you're about to be in ignorance and you're about to be stuck in a place you don't want to be stuck in for a really long time. So it's best to, if you're a spirit in a body, you're not really trying to do nothing. It's just know that that's the most wise thing to do. When other things are like, when stuff is getting crazy around you, my life has always gone wrong when I got too much into something. Specifically as a Gemini ascendant, I get too much into communicating. And because that's the thing, whenever you're communicating, you can only project because you can only perceive what you project. Now, air is balanced. So air isn't about projecting. Everything is projection, though. It's just, again, the spectrum here. This is all light. So if you're a fire sign, you are into projecting, and that's your main thing. This is how you tell if someone's more into fire. If you meet someone who doesn't move and they don't react to what you're saying, they're spiritual. They're still, they're like, what? They like have their own vibration. They don't let you affect them. Like what happens in your life, they're not like, oh, and they're not coming to you. Like that's a spirit. Someone who's fiery, so that's someone who's in the ego. That's someone who's projecting their imagination onto you, and thus someone who's fiery wants to transform you into their imagination. So they're trying to mold you in their image. This is what fire does. This is why fire is consumptive. It doesn't matter what everything looks like. It will make it all look like one thing. It will turn all of it into one thing. That's what fire is about. One vision. This is why it's the number one. It's the individual. So your flame cannot be tamed. We are all imaginations first. We all are dreams. So your imagination, your fire, that's you projecting your first self. This is how you desire then to be perceived. That's the point of your imagination. Your imagination is how you desire to perceive yourself, and it's how you desire to be perceived by others. And you're not going to learn just like being straight up in your imagination, because also that's not sustainable, and that's not practical, and that's not, it's relatable, because this is the point of all of us having our own unique imaginations. If you were to step into my imagination, you wouldn't be you anymore. You would be transformed into my image. And now you're being transformed to fit my desires. And that's the point of white supremacy. That's the point of someone making you believe in their idea. If they can make you believe like, hey, I'm God and you're not. You need to come to my heaven and not create your own. And you believe in that, well, now it's true for you. Because everything is true. If you believe it, it's true because you're making it real. And your spirit's going to remind you that that's not really you, though. So that's the thing of fire. Fire is, it's so much projection and it's so negative that it is inherently destructive. This is why you don't see fire out in nature. Everything in nature is created from the desire to be fire, but you're not going to see fire actually. It's not at all sustainable. It's not at all connective. It's just truly where the inspiration, the inspire fire comes from. We all get inspired by fire, but the only thing that we can touch from fire is air. So this is why both fire and air are like the high vibrational elements, whereas water and earth are the low vibrational elements. Fire and air are all up here, water and earth are down here. So fire and water, that's the yin version. So no one can see your fire and water. No one can see your imagination or your feelings about your imagination. We can only see that once you combine them and you create life by turning it into chi, you make it air. And now that air, that chi is going to settle down into a body. And now you can animate the body with your communications based on your imaginations and your feelings. Pretty lit. It's so simple, right? So if you see someone who's projecting, if you're dealing with someone who's like, let's say they're always talking about what they want to do for you. Like I was just dealing with someone like that here, and they're a big Leo, where the only time that they're happy to talk to you or really positive is if they're talking about plans they have for you. So that's how you know you're dealing with a fire sign. Like if they only like really get excited or talk about plans that they have for you, if they're excited and want to relate on all the things that they're projecting into you, and basically they just want you to reflect them, they need you to react to, like, because fire is constantly moving. Fire is the most unstable element. That's the point. Fire is the most unstable element. It is the most irrational element. People like to say water is irrational. That's the balance, I guess, because who's more irrational? The first irrational element or the element that reflects that irrational element? You know, because that's where water is supposed to have the wisdom to like not reflect irrationality, but the fact is it was created from that to reflect it, so it's like more irrational. This is the balance of, you can have your dreams and you know what you imagine yourself to be, but you can feel totally different ways about that day in and day out. And that's your water. And then that's where water would be more irrational. But perhaps your imagination is irrational because it is inspiring. It's creating these feelings, or it's even being created from these feelings, because your feelings are more invisible than your fire. So anytime you have a dream coming from your spirit, in between that 0 and that 1 is a whole percentile range of your first energetic motion that no one can see. And like it manifests as your first dream, your first imagination that only you can see. And then you have the feelings about that, and we see how it just extends and extends, macro, micro stuff. So if someone's in their fire, you know someone's in their fire if they're projecting a lot. If they feel like they need to transform you into their image, they can't relate with you. If you don't believe what they're telling you to believe, then that's a fiery spirit. So that's the point of the New World Order, being this fire, using, you know, fire through the Industrial Revolution, all this metal stuff that has spread throughout the world and caused climate change and enslaved humans and been just spreading genocide everywhere based on how it needs to make people believe in its fire. So that's the whole thing with Christianity, where it's like, hey, I have an imagination. I'm not good enough without this savior. I got saved by this savior, so now no one else is good enough without this savior. And if this person that I just met, especially if they're an indigenous person, is not worshiping the same person I am, I now have jurisdiction to do all the evil things that that person I'm worshiping told me not to do. But we'll find a loophole. Our book has loopholes. So all religions are going to have loopholes for spirits to do what they want. Because that's the point of a religion, a religion. It's a legion of demons. It's people who are doing what they want on repeat. And it's just about, they need to get you to believe in their fire. So all they can do when they're doing what they want is fire. That's the point of fire. So someone who only does what they want to do is fire. They're living in their desire. And if you only do what you want to do, that's very unsustainable. You don't have discipline. So that's how you know if someone's mainly in their fire. If someone's mainly in their water, then that's going to be someone who is reflective. That's going to be someone who specifically, basically everything the opposite of fire. So when you think about fire projecting its imagination, people who are water, they're there silent, like the spirit, but they react. And they're there to react to the environment and hold the memory of the environment, really, because that's what water is all about, holding memories. So my friend, big water sign, she loves to take photos and she likes to be in the dark. She likes to be in big groups of people where she can just document and take photos of everything and socialize. She's a very social person. She loves connections. This is a thing of water, specifically cancers. Cancers love to connect. That's why they're kind of named cancers, because the disease cancer, it's about connecting uncontrollably. It's about something that desires to connect so much that it kills everything around it. And water can do that. Now, that's really when water looks like fire, because that's the point of fire. Fire can't just stay in one place alone. Fire needs to spread. Fire is I need to consume more and more and more, spread all out. So water can do that. Water is our Pisces, our Cancer, and our Aquarius? No. What am I doing? Whoa. Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. There we go. Because Scorpio is the fixed water. Scorpio balances out that Taurus. Our water signs, they are obsessed with connections, and they are obsessed with reacting to connections. So they're not about projecting their imagination. They're about projecting just enough to reflect other people's imaginations. That's the point of water. The point of water is to project just enough so that you can connect other people's imaginations, other people's projections, and that's basically wisdom right there, because life is only created from water. That's why we can look out into the cosmos and see it's just blackness. That's water. We're underwater. We're underwater. Air is underwater. When you look up, that's water. And that blackness is just the deep subconscious water. Every time you see a star, it's because that water is making fire possible. So then when the fire joins the water, it turns into this chi, magnetic force. And then that creates a star. And the star can become a planet. And all this is just spaceships or things that spirits project their consciousness into. So when you're water, you can tell someone's water if they are concerned mainly with reacting and reflecting your imagination or other people's imaginations. My friend is super water because her art is photography. So her art is completely and primarily only at the whim of what people in the environment are doing around her. Her photography is only as good as how she can get people to communicate their imaginations around her, basically. And that's very water. That's the point of water. The point of water is that it's reacting to fire, but it's there to be the container for fire. So when fire shoots out, when a spirit shoots out its desire, there needs to be a demon. There needs to be negativity to receive that desire. There needs to be the opposite end so that you can have a circuit. So someone in water is very emotional, right? Someone in water, they're very reactive. Fire is emotional too, by the way. Fire is just egotistically emotional. Fire isn't emotional in, hey, I want to connect with you. Fire is whoa, I want you to connect with me. And then fire will hate you if you're not connecting with it in the way that it desires. Whereas water, if it loves you, it has to love your imagination first, it's going to desire to connect with your imagination in any way that it can. And that's where water is also very different from fire. It's nurturing. That's the point. That's water thrives when it gets to nurture others. So that's where water is like, okay, I just need to find an imagination, a man, because water is feminine, fire is masculine. I have to find a man that I enjoy reflecting so that I can enjoy nurturing him and we can create some kind of life. This is why water and fire signs aren't really productive together. They're fun together because they create a lot of air. So they create a lot of communication. But communication, there's just like, if you're only communicating, then you have nothing to show for it. You know, it's like if you're just talking around all day, every day, but you're not going into building structures, then you're not actually creating life. So this is why water pairs with earth way better than fire. Water and earth actually creates wood. That actually creates connection. That actually creates the trees that allow us to facilitate everything that the elements stand for on their own. Like that's the point of a tree. The tree is like all the elements brought into balance together. So that's how you know if someone's in water. Now, if someone is in air, this means that they're very balanced between their fire and their water. And this is someone that can actually get very cold in communicating really intense things. Because that's what air is about. Air is about communicating very passionate things in a cold way. Air is like, I mean, air is hot, right? But like also not. It's interesting. The way that air cools down. So when we think about how air basically connects everything, like when you just look up, look down, left and right, it's all existing inside of air, then we see that air is, as far as zodiac sign, that's a Gemini, that's Aquarius, and that's Libra. Air is all about maintaining order. Earth is the order. Air is about maintaining order. So air is being created from fire and water. So that fire is the imagination, unstable. Water is the feeling, unstable. It creates air. Air is the opportunity to become stable. So air is us communicating. Air is like, in physical reality, if people are emotional and reacting to each other's desires and just fighting, that's war, right? Fire and water coming together. It's making a lot of air, but with nothing to show for it. And if they keep fighting, they're really just going to be spirits because they're going to kill each other. So they're going to just decimate all their lands and be nothing and just be like, man, well, here we are, back to spirit. That air was really just nothing. That's how people create circumstances that do not work in their best interest, because they're not actually being balanced in the way that they're communicating their imaginations and feelings. Because air naturally happens. If you're looking at something, that thing only exists because it was combined with fire and water from a spirit. And now that thing expresses, it externalizes that spirit. And then the body is the earth that stabilizes that. So with air, it is essential to be fair. Air. Fair and balanced. That's the whole thing with maintaining order. That's Libra's stuff. That's why Gemini is all about truth. This is why Aquarius is so much about spreading knowledge. Because it's all about keeping everything fair and balanced. When things are fair, we have fun. We have fun at fairs. Life is supposed to be fair. So that's what air signs are all about. You know you're talking to an air sign if they talk about what's fair a lot. If they talk about justice issues, if they talk about social things, if they talk about situations that actually connect and affect everybody, and being able to like logically see that and like block out how we facilitate communication, that's a big air sign. Like, so that's a big air sign. Air is all about communication. Air knows that wisdom, that awesome things are going to come from people communicating properly. Now, this is where air can go either way, in like positive or negative. It's based on your relationship with it, really, and how you perceive air. Because the negative side of air is that all it wants to do is talk. And this is where it can destroy structures. Loose lips sink ships. I've had to learn this as a Gemini in Chase Calloway body life. Just so I can like harden this fact even deeper in. Talking just to talk is destructive, because what's happening is that, especially let's say you're talking about, for example, someone's relationship. So if two people are in a relationship and they're showing that they're not happy in this relationship, but for some reason they're more happy together, and that reason would be that they don't want to be alone, but they create problems when they're together, so they're not really happy together, but it's preferable to being alone because they haven't worked their things out, then that's gonna rub off on you when you hang out with them. And the more you hang out with those kinds of people in relationships, people who like aren't actually happy being alone, so they're only happy with each other, which means they're not actually happy with each other, which means that problems are coming out and they like sting each other all the time and they're just mean, and like they bring you into it, but then they're trying not to bring you into it. Like that's whack situations to be in. And me as a Gemini, I've learned that when I speak my mind about those situations, it's like manifesting the very thing that they're trying to ignore. So it's up to me as a good friend. If two people, two friends are in a relationship and they're trying to drag me into their problems, that I stay silent. Because when I've spoken too much, it's forced the people in the relationship to either cut me out of the life and get super negative and sacrifice me like Jesus, because they basically don't want to do what I'm saying they have to do, which is fast from each other. I'm like, hey, you probably like shouldn't, at this point, like y'all are fighting, like y'all have told me a bunch of things. This has been situations where people in these relationships will say things to me that they claim that they didn't say when I bring it up with them in front of their partner. Like, so we're talking that deep, where like everyone's an individual. Like I've learned this, like people, a girl and guy, whoever, guy and guy, girl and girl, whoever, spirits can be in their partnership, but they come and relate to me as an individual. And because I feel like their partnership is so important, or like they're so strong, I feel like I can communicate what one partner told me, or like what they've been saying to me in confidence. But the thing is, they told me these things in confidence because they could not tell each other. So naturally, when I, as a Gemini, want to get that out in the open and communicate like, hey, y'all have been telling me this in private and doing this, and like this is like how I feel about all of it, then they're forced to either come to terms with that or sacrifice me. And so that's how lots of relationships go bad and end. This is how air signs like to end relationships. If you're an air sign, you may very well unconsciously end relationships by talking too much. And then it's kind of like you reflecting back on that, like, man, I shouldn't have talked so much. But then also, as an air sign, you kind of want people you can talk as much as you want to around. Like, that's like the best connection that you can have. Like, that's like true understanding. Like, that's what air signs crave. Like, Geminis, air signs in general, don't want to be around people who take things super personal at all. Because we know that that stops communication. The moment you take something personally, well, now you just let your relationship with what I was saying block you from actually getting to the message of what I was saying. Because the message of what I'm saying is not at all the words I'm using. This is what air signs know. Air signs are good at that. Whereas water and fire signs, because they're so reactive, if you're an air sign that's using the wrong earth, aka the wrong words, then people won't catch your message. So this is why it's essential then, as a Gemini, a Libra, an Aquarius, to cultivate the right language and develop the right relationship with the words so that you can express yourself in a way that is more authentic to your spirit. This is why this world sucks, because this world, I remember growing up, and that was a phrase a lot. Crazy people talk to themselves. And that was something that was repeated throughout grade school and shows and just like weird science stuff and just whatever. Like, it was an idea that was spread around so much that you're crazy if you talk to yourself. And I like that has spurred people being so incredibly spiritually ignorant as Americans. If you don't talk to yourself, then how do you learn how to talk? You talk to others like you talk to yourself. So if you don't talk to yourself, then like you're just what, feeling yourself? And the point of talking is that you can stabilize how you feel about yourself. If you're only talking, if you're only feeling yourself, then you're just like emotionally chaotic. You're not you're not balanced. You're not creating a spaceship. Air is a spaceship. Like if you don't create your own atmosphere to protect yourself, because that's the point of like having individuality in a world. Like your aura, your atmosphere, your energy sphere is how you communicate with yourself. And that's what's going to protect you from everything out here. So, air signs are all about communicating. Air signs are all about finding out what's fair and balanced. And air signs are all about talking to themselves. If you don't talk to yourself, then you're not going to know how to talk to other people. The spirit talks to itself. So this is the other thing with religion. Spirits who don't talk to themselves can be convinced to talk to something else. So if you're not talking to yourself, then you're talking to something else. Either way, you didn't make a body to not talk. The only way you made a body was through talking, was through communicating. So this is why religious scientific systems are obsessed with making you believe that you shouldn't talk to yourself, because they know that you yourself are God. And they're like, well, if you talk to yourself, you're going to create an atmosphere that breaks you out of our system. And you're going to rise out of the confines we have you in. And we don't want that. So we need to convince you not to talk to yourself. So you only talk to us. And that's how you're going to build our earth. That brings us to earth. So when you're an air sign, you can't speak without words. So here we are in the balance, right? So this is why water and earth creates life. And water gets to earth through air. So when air is communicating its feelings of water over here, it needs to use earth. It uses light. It uses light to communicate that. And then it's just about what light is the most familiar to you so that it can communicate what it feels like communicating based on the imagination it desires to project into your space. This is all of life. You see that? Like that was all of life in like a sense. Or at the very least, all of communication. That was all of life in the simplest way. So words, you as an air sign, all communication, all things are made through communicating one's feelings with light based on how you desire to project your imagination out. That's all of life. Here we are. See, I wish school told me that. It took me fasting a lot and doing many psychedelics to get to this point, so I could be so deeply in touch with my spirit to just flow like this. Shout out Earth. Earth is the stabilization. So now we have the fourth and final element. Earth being 4 is how, and I don't even think I mentioned the numbers with the elements. So let me backtrack real quick. Water is 2. That's why water is 2 energy. 2 is life. Everything's a vibration. You see that 2. All of life is created out of the vibration. That's how pyramids get made. So with 2, water is all about connecting. Like fire is 1, it's individual, it's connecting with itself. So it's only projecting its desires out. And then water is connecting with basically anything but itself. It's connecting with the whole world and everything around it so it can react to that instead of itself. So this is where fire can chronically love itself and water can chronically hate itself. And we see that manifest in society as like men being toxically masculine and being lost in their desires, and they feel like they get to make people live by their desires. And then women chronically hate themselves, where they feel like they need to serve these desires that they don't want to serve. So we're all learning about ourselves with these elements. 3 is balance. So that's the point of air. And air, that 3 is energy. 3 is energy. Chi. It's gotta rhyme. Spirit loves it. Spirit loves rhymes. So that's the point of then, like, you get the vibration right here, but really, like, here's the vibration, and then it's carrying the intention in the middle. So, like, the vibration, like, boom, here we got water, but now you ignited your fire. and now it's carrying that. And that's basically like your first Merkaba, Merka. So that water, connection, Ka. 3, the first air, externalization of spirit. Ba, the body, that's the air anchoring to something, because air is everywhere, which is then like that's not sustainable still. Like you're not going to travel the universe being everywhere. Like no, like that everywhere needs to get contained. Now you have a star, a planet, a spaceship, a mind that you can create life inside of. And then this is where when that air is contained, now it's settling inside of itself, and now we're creating Earth. Now we're creating like a planet. Now we're like so that's the point of Earth, is to stabilize how we communicate our imaginations and feelings. That's like straight up Earth. So anyone who, like Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo, these Earth signs are going to be the most concerned with having a practical life, like having money, being rich, material possessions, in general, anything dealing with stability, anything dealing with not having to move, not having to react. Because that's the point of Earth. Like it is the spirit, the whole point of the spirit creating a body is that it wants to stay still. Like as a spirit, you are chaotic, and that's why you're scared of dying, because you're scared of going back to infinite chaos. So you feel safe when you're in a body. And the point of being in a body then is to stabilize and practicalize the way that you communicate your imagination and your feelings in the realm that you're in. So for whatever reason, you're here, you have an imagination, you have feelings about your imagination, and you can communicate that with people in your life. And the structures, everything that gets built in your life is going to be based on how you communicate that. And doubly, the way that you communicate that is going to be based on the structures that you were able to relate with people on up to that point. So no one, it doesn't matter how in tune with my vibration, my voice you are, you're not going to understand the full message of anything I'm saying if you don't speak the same language as I am. And if you have not developed the same emotional relationship with the words that I have. Like that's sort of why we're all forced to go to school, because it's this white supremacist colonial ideology forcing us to relate on the ideas that they're using to take over this planet. And this is how they take over the planet. You see, it's a cycle. We create life. So they need us to push out their concepts about how we're worthless so that we can worship the concepts they made to colonize our lands. And then that's how they're God. And before we were God, because we believe in ourselves and we're just expressing ourselves. But now we are our own demons because we believe that someone who hates us and needs us to create for them is the true creator. And that's the conundrum Black people find themselves in. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. So that's the point of Earth. The point of Earth is to stabilize feelings. This is why water can go into Earth, and now we can create life from it. And all simulations, everything you can see is Earth then. It's Earth. Everything you can touch is Earth, basically. Because nothing can touch a spirit. Spirits can't be touched. All we can do is feel like being touched. And if we feel like being touched, then we're going to create circumstances where we can be. So that's where, that's the point of Earth. Like the way we communicate our air, that's us communicating our imaginations or our feelings. We're now creating the structure that is going to inform how we touch ourselves and how we get touched by the world around us. So that's 4, 2 and 2, right? Earth is water reflected in on itself. So Earth is like everything water wishes it could be. Like, for real, like Earth is what water aspires to be, straight up. Water is like, yo, I'm so chaotic. And Earth is like, man, if only you could be stable. Because the illusion is that we can stop moving. See, we know everything vibrates. We know everything is moving. That's the point of, just expressing ourselves. We're not expressing ourselves to be still. Again, but that's just me not being in the ego. Things just have to look still. but even then things are moving. So the point of Earth is that it's a demon because it's an illusion. Life is an illusion, logic is an illusion, everything is emotional. The point of Earth is that it separates how we feel like being connected, and that's the illusion, because the fact is we are all connected. The deeper fact is we are all separate. None of our imaginations can connect. Whenever people try to tell you that you are part of their God, part of their imagination, they are lost in having their imagination colonized. And you just need to double down on talking to yourself and know that you are an infinite individual. You can piece out of this world right now and create your whole own simulation. I don't need to be here. The fact I know I can do that means I know you can do that too. That simple. It's just a matter of if you want to, because of course, because spirits don't want to be alone, Earth is sort of a hotbed. This is like the planet to be for connecting, which is why people who want you to connect with their vision of fiery new world order would want to colonize this place and burn it all up to the ground and fill it with trash or whatever, and then get obsessed with like burning trash and what. So the point of Earth, this 4, is its water reflected in on itself. So that now it's still moving, but it's moving the slowest because it's stable. It's in control of its emotions. No matter how chaotic and wild it's emotionally getting, it's not going to look like that from the outside. And so that's where, like, as a Virgo and a Taurus, I've learned a lot about myself through tripping at conventions, especially tripping like heavy on psychedelics. And I've consistently seen how people can't tell I'm tripping. Like, people can tell whenever someone else is like tweaking or tripping, because like they're just like, blah, blah, I'm seeing blah, 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 blah. And like people have this negative stigma about psychedelics for the most part, because so many people get like very fiery or watery. They're either fiery, so they're projecting out all this stuff, or they're watery and they're reacting to all this stuff. Either way, it looks the same. It looks like this. And the fact is, it looks like this because they're still communicating it. So that's the air. Everything you can see is air. This is where Earth is totally different. It's separate from air, water, fire, and spirit. Earth is like, I'm chilling. And Earth can be having the wildest psychedelic experience ever. Like, things can just be like melting and blowing up and just like twisting, like planets, like all these buildings are like falling and then they turn to mountains. Like that scene in Lucy, like the end part of Lucy, you can like just straight up like hit the and just see all that on Lucy. Be like, bro. And Earth is just going to be like, interesting. Like, Earth will feel chaotic. Earth will be like, whoa, like on the inside. Like, this is the point of 2 and 2. Like, Earth internally is like, okay, I'm feeling everything else. I'm feeling everything everyone else is feeling as an Earth sign. Like, that's Earth, everything's connected through the vibration. Earth is just good at stabilizing it. So when water and fire and air are busy doing this, they don't want to relate with others who are also doing this, because life isn't created when 2 people are doing the same exact thing. Like, life is created when you get the positive and negative. So if one person's being super like this, there has to be the other person to be like, chill, so that this person can feel anchored to that person and feel safe. You're not going to feel safe if you emotionally react and then the person that you're with also emotionally reacts. Like, you don't feel safe communicating to that person, right? You don't feel like you can tell them anything if they react emotionally to what you say. The people that you feel like you can tell anything to is someone like a therapist or someone who is just more Earth, and they're good at absorbing it. That's the point of Earth. It absorbs your feelings, it doesn't react, and now it's creating life. So this is how you can tell the difference between fire, number 1 signs, water, number 2 signs, air, number 3 signs, and earth, number 4 signs. And more so, not signs, but what energy you and the people in your life prefer to be in. So If you prefer to project your imagination out, you rather live in fire. If you rather react to other people's imaginations, you'd rather live in water. If you would rather communicate and facilitate communication, then you live in air. And if you would rather build structures and stabilize the ways in which we communicate our imaginations, then you're all about earth. Peace. I hope that was helpful. This went like pretty long. Um, but yeah, that's all the elements. So just know like all these elements, they are all light. So fire is the lightest light, and then it becomes water, and then it becomes air. Because although air may appear lighter than water in this realm, it's not. Because air is still water. It's just that what we've been trained to call water is a denser version of air. When you look at space, that's a lighter version of air. And then we have the three right there. So here we are. Pretty lit. Um, just know that, yes, elements are all light, and it's just the way that the spirit decides to move. And you're all the elements. So that's the idea of avatar, and just you learning about yourself based on the lifetime that you're in and what astrological chart you've got going on. And then you can look at all the planets in your chart and be like, okay, cool. Like I'm learning about myself based on where I chose to create a body, and now I can be more of who I want to be. And I just want you to be more of who you want to be, as long as it's lovingly.